It was just after midnight when a silver 2022 Audi A6 shot past the flickering neon of a downtown 7-Eleven, the engine howling like it was begging to be caught. 3 patrol cruisers snapped into pursuit, lights painting the empty storefronts in frantic red-blue stripes. Minutes later, the Audi screeched to a stop near Pershing Square, driver's door flung open, and a teenager in a black hoodie bolted into the darkness. Officers sprinted after him, radios crackling with the words, "Possible grand theft auto." Less than 4 blocks away, 19-year-old Jalen Dawson was leaving a taco truck with 2 friends, soda still fizzing in his hand. A squad car lurched to the curb. An officer pointed, "That's him!" And before Jalen could speak, he was face down on the pavement, cuffs locking around his wrists. The arrest report would later claim he'd been seen behind the wheel, that he'd run, that the fingerprints on the abandoned Audi were the nail in the coffin. But eyewitness memories warp under sirens and adrenaline. The store's surveillance camera captured a white teenager jumping from the Audi before vanishing into an alley, footage that never made it into the initial case file. Even stranger, a quick check of LAPD's own dashboard showed the arresting unit's GPS blank for a full 6 minutes, the exact window when the officer swore he'd watched Jalen speeding away. On paper, it looked airtight: stolen car, fingerprints, a kid in the wrong place at the worst possible second. In reality, the story had already sprouted hairline fractures. 1 missing video clip here, 1 silent tracking device there, small details easy to ignore when a headline-ready suspect is already in cuffs. But those details weren't going to stay quiet for long. Officer Daniel Ruiz swore under oath that he'd chased the Audi from the first screech of tires to the moment Jalen hit the pavement. His written report reads like a Hollywood storyboard: sirens, high-speed turns, a fearless cop keeping eyes on the suspect every second. There's only one problem. The cruiser's GPS file shows Ruiz nowhere near the pursuit route for an unexplained 6-minute gap. That gap isn't a conspiracy theory rumor. It's stamped right inside the LAPD tracker archive, the same database auditors flagged last year for data anomalies in more than 2,500 incidents. Ruiz's log plunges into a dead zone at 12:07 a.m., 3 minutes before the Audi is spotted, and doesn't resurface until 12:13 a.m., 2 blocks from where Jalen was already cuffed. When defense investigators pulled the metadata, the file looked as if someone had simply yanked the cord from an old TV. Pure snow. Why the blackout? Officially, patrol trackers can drop if a car tunnels under thick concrete or dives into an underground garage. But this chase was on open streets. Unofficially, courthouse gossip says Ruiz had been written up once before for manual deactivation, a polite way of saying he'd turned the unit off. Those internal notes are sealed, so the rumor lives in the gray zone, provable only if a judge demands the full disciplinary file. Jalen's first courtroom salvo was simple: verify the GPS. A single subpoena could expose everything: where the cruiser really was, who Ruiz could actually see, and whether his entire testimony rests on 6 invisible minutes. The prosecution called the request a stall tactic. The jury called it a question they suddenly needed answered. And just when the state's story started wobbling, prosecutors reached for what they thought was an unbreakable pillar: those fingerprint matches on the Audi's steering wheel. Fingerprints feel like magic. 1 swirl of powder, 1 fluorescent photograph, and boom, the culprit's identity glows on screen. TV has trained us to believe those spirals never lie. Prosecutor Mitchell Carrington leaned on that faith hard, waving a glossy lab sheet in front of the jury. Dawson's ridges, Dawson's guilt, case closed. But forensic labs are run by humans, not Hollywood. 2 months before Jalen's arrest, a whistleblower inside California's Division of Forensic Science claimed that 18 fingerprint stations statewide were overdue for calibration. Translation: tiny misalignments could nudge partial prints into false matches. The memo sat buried in an inbox until a journalist dug it out, after Jalen was already in custody. Chain of custody raises another eyebrow. Evidence techs collected the Audi at 2:14 a.m., drove it 12 miles to the impound lot, then locked it overnight. The next morning, different personnel dusted the steering wheel, boxing swabs and print lifts into paper envelopes. Standard procedure demands a signature every time an item changes hands. Jalen's discovery request uncovered 2 blank lines. No initials, no timestamps, just empty space where accountability should live. Then there's simple probability. Thousands of innocent surfaces carry your prints every day. The jacket you tried on, the rideshare you hopped into, the door handle you pulled for a stranger. Jalen's attorney, well, Jalen himself, illustrated that truth with his department store jacket analogy. The jury leaned in. Even Judge Grayson's gavel hand paused mid-air. The question floated across the wood-paneled room. Does touching something automatically make you a thief? Carrington shifted tactics, reminding everyone that the Audi's owner never gave anyone permission to climb inside. Fair point, unless of course the owner's own words tell a different story. Words the prosecution somehow forgot to mention. Because buried 3 pages deep in the original police file sits a statement signed by Raymond Whitaker, and in that statement, Whitaker describes the teen he actually saw sliding behind the wheel. Spoiler, it wasn't Jalen. Those forgotten words were about to swing open an even bigger door. Raymond Whitaker's signature sits in blue ink, neat and steady. Exactly the kind of detail no prosecutor wants the jury to notice if it undercuts the state's narrative. In his very first interview, taken less than 20 minutes after the Audi disappeared, Whitaker told officers he'd seen a skinny white kid, maybe 17, skateboard tucked under one arm, jump into the still-running car and peel away. That description never came within a mile of matching Jalen Dawson, yet the quote slipped out of every court filing that crossed Judge Grayson's desk. How does a statement that crucial just vanish? Defense circles call it a Brady black hole, named after the Supreme Court rule that the state must hand over anything favorable to the accused. Prosecutors insist omissions are accidents, misscanned pages, mislabeled folders, but courthouse whispers suggest another motive. Once Carrington realized his star witness, Officer Ruiz, was shaky, the case hinged on speed, not transparency. Get the plea, close the file, move on. Jalen found the missing excerpt while combing through raw body cam footage the public defender's office had copied by routine. Snippets of the owner's remarks survived as tinny audio on a sergeant's microphone. Easy to miss unless you'd spent half your life training your ear on trial transcripts the way other kids memorize mixtape lyrics. He filed a motion that morning, slid the printed quote across the defense table by noon, and by 2 p.m., the courtroom atmosphere had flipped from smug certainty to open doubt. Carrington tried to pivot, claiming Whitaker had later grown unsure under follow-up questioning. There is no record of that follow-up. Rumors suggest it was never taped. Whitaker himself told a local reporter he was never asked to clarify. Judge Grayson's brow furrowed so deeply the gallery swore it left a crease in the bench. One more missing document meant one more crack in a case already spiderwebbing toward collapse. If the jury was wondering how a teenager managed to spot holes veteran attorneys missed, they were about to get their answer. Because Jalen was finished letting anyone else speak for him. And the moment he said, "Your Honor, I'll be handling my own defense," the temperature in that courtroom plummeted. The moment Jalen said, "I'll be defending myself," the room dropped 10 degrees. Court regulars know self-representation is legal quicksand. Judges recite warnings, defendants nod, and most cave within minutes. Jalen didn't blink. Instead, he calmly cited Ferretta versus California. Yes, he knew the case name, affirming his right to steer his own fate. Judge Grayson raised an eyebrow, delivered the standard lecture about waiving counsel at your peril, and waited for the kid to fold. Jalen simply replied, "Understood, Your Honor," with the same tone most teens use to confirm a menu order. Where did he get that poise? Start with Denise Dawson's living room library, dusty volumes of Cal Crim, procedure piled next to homework sheets. While classmates traded NBA stats, Jalen memorized hearsay exceptions. He'd spend Saturdays shadowing his mom at the legal aid clinic, absorbing depositions instead of cartoons. By 16, he could spot a Brady violation faster than most first-year associates. By 18, he'd mapped out cross-exam questions for fun. Friends called it nerdy. Today it looked prophetic. Grayson tried one last nudge. "Mr. Dawson, even seasoned attorneys hire counsel when they're charged." Jalen nodded respectfully. "Yes, Your Honor, and seasoned attorneys sometimes miss what's right in front of them." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Prosecutor Carrington's pen froze mid-scribble. From that second on, Jalen controlled the tempo. He requested real-time access to discovery files, asked the clerk for a standing objection to late evidence, and, audaciously, scheduled his own witness list, starting with the lab tech the state had forgotten to summon. The jury watched a crash course in courtroom chess. Every polite "Your Honor" disguised a strategic fork. Subpoena the cruiser's raw GPS metadata, move to compel Officer Ruiz's sealed discipline log, file a motion in limine to bar the fingerprint sheet until the chain of custody blanks were explained. Grayson, who'd expected a perfunctory plea before his 2 p.m. tea time, found himself paging through precedent he hadn't cited in years. And Jalen wasn't done. His next target was the prosecution's strongest remaining pillar, the timeline itself. The neat, minute-by-minute story Carrington swore would stand even if every piece of physical evidence crumbled. Jalen was about to pull that timeline apart, strand by strand. Carrington's timeline was supposed to be unbreakable. 12:01 a.m., Audi reported stolen. 12:04, pursuit begins. 12:12, suspect cuffed. Jalen started poking holes with a single sheet of paper, the master dispatch log. First jab. The dispatch showed the first cruiser arriving at the 7-Eleven at 12:06, 2 minutes after Carrington claimed Ruiz was already tailing the Audi. Second jab. Dashcam stills proved Ruiz's unit was parked outside a coffee shop 7 blocks west at 12:08. Engine off, lights dark. Even on an empty highway, no patrol car leaps 7 blocks in negative time. Grayson leaned forward, reading and rereading the timestamps. His pen, earlier tapping with boredom, went rigid between his fingers. A faint vibration buzzed on the bench. Rumor later said the clerk texted, "Local press and gallery. Case live streaming." Whatever the message, the judge's eyes flicked to the spectators, then to Carrington, then back to Jalen, as if recalibrating his reputation in real time. Jalen pressed the advantage. "Your Honor, the state insists every second lines up, yet their own tech records disagree. If the clock is wrong, the story is wrong. No theatrics, no shouting, just arithmetic." The jury, once slouched, now sat bolt upright, pencils frozen mid-note. Carrington tried a late save. Minor clerical errors happen, but the words tasted of surrender. Grayson snapped, "Errors don't put people in jail," and ordered an immediate recess. He never made it to the hallway. 5 minutes later, he retook the bench, face stern, voice flat. "The prosecution's evidence is irreparably compromised. Case dismissed." Gasps ricocheted off the paneled walls. One reporter actually dropped his phone. Jalen exhaled, shoulders finally loosening. Grayson lifted the gavel for emphasis, then paused. The arrogance from earlier was gone, replaced by something closer to respect, and maybe a hint of alarm at how fast the ground had shifted. But the real quake waited outside those doors. Reporters were gathering, watchdog groups were tweeting, and somewhere in the district attorney's tower, inboxes were already filling with one urgent question. If this case cracked so easily, how many others would follow? Next, the fallout spills into the streets, social feeds, and city hall corridors, and no one's badge or career is completely safe. Continues Section 7. Fallout spreads, faster than the headlines. Jalen barely made it down the courthouse steps before 20 microphones converged like bees on sugar. By breakfast, Let Jalen Speak was trending above last night's playoff score, 1.2 million views and climbing. Local radio replayed the judge's brusque case dismissed on a loop. National outlets clipped the moment Jalen corrected Carrington's timeline, with nothing but a dispatch printout and steady breath. Inside LAPD headquarters, the mood flipped from routine to triage. Rumors, unverified but persistent, say Internal Affairs opened an expedited inquiry into Officer Ruiz before noon. Sources whisper His body cam is under forensic recovery to see whether its Bluetooth sync was killed the same 6-minute stretch the cruiser GPS went dark. Ruiz for now is on paid desk duty, though the official memo calls it a temporary administrative realignment. Across town, the district attorney's tower turned its lights on early. An emergency email thread flagged 27 other Carrington prosecutions where defense lawyers had complained about late discovery. No decisions yet, just thinly veiled panic that one domino might topple the whole line. Activist groups pounced. The Innocence Network tweeted a link to its report on the 38 wrongful convictions already overturned in LA County, adding, "Make that 39. Students at 3 local high schools passed around grainy clips of Jalen's quiet cross-examination, dubbing him the kid who clowned the system. And in a move that surprised no one, except maybe Jalen, admissions offices from 2 HBCU pre-law programs and a state university emailed scholarship packets by sundown. Yet the most unexpected reaction came from the bench. Courthouse insiders claim Judge Grayson met privately with the presiding judge to propose a refresher seminar on Brady obligations. Same man who joked about a golf tee time now lobbying for continuing education credits on evidence disclosure. Funny how a single afternoon can spin a reputation on its axis. But numbers and headlines only skim the surface. The deeper question, how many Jalens are still trapped under bad paperwork and missing videos, was about to hit viewers square in the conscience. Think Jalen's tale is a one-off fluke? Stat sheets say otherwise. National studies put the forensic lab error rate near 12%. Eyewitness misidentification hovers at 28% in overturned convictions. And every time a suspect takes a plea to save time, the real facts may never see daylight. Jalen had the rare mix of knowledge, nerve, and a mom who stockpiled law books. Most defendants don't. So what now? 1. Jury duty isn't optional homework. You hate the summons, the courts count on that. Show up anyway. Ask how evidence was handled, who verified the chain, whether exculpatory leads were buried under a paperwork avalanche. 2. Public records requests are free, mostly. In California, you can FOIA dashcam logs, disciplinary files, even lab calibration sheets. One well-worded request can yank a dusty truth into sunlight. 3. Share, but vet. Every clip viral outrage moves agencies faster than formal letters, yet misinformation kills credibility. Before retweeting, confirm the source. The goal is reform, not rumor mill. 4. Support legal aid. Clinics, donations, volunteer paralegal hours, or even rides to court dates widen the safety net for defendants without Denise Dawson-level guidance. Remember, a justice system is only as honest as the thousands of tiny choices people make inside it. Choices to check a timestamp twice, to copy the owner's full statement, to keep trackers live, to demand the full story when something smells off. Jalen's choices changed his future. A crowd's choices could change the statute book. The moment the system blinked. When that gavel fell, it wasn't just one teenager walking free. It was a blueprint sliding across the public's desk. A blueprint that shows how curiosity, basic math, and a refusal to accept good enough can split concrete assumptions like fault lines. The next Jalen might be your classmate, your cousin, or maybe you, and the 6 minutes that decide their fate could already be ticking. If this story cracked your certainty even a little, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next deep dive. More than clicks, share the questions. Who's auditing the auditors? What evidence went missing in the last case you skimmed over in the newsfeed? The law is written in ink, but justice is written in human choices. Let's choose to keep looking.